My name is Miguel Mata, first generation American, retired military veteran, and now full-time college student. In my lifetime, I've come to meet people from all walks of life, from every corner of the country and most parts of the world, and what I can tell you is, everyone has a story. On my channel, I plan to share those stories with all of you and prove that despite the differences that make each of us who we are as individuals, fundamentally, we are all the same. And I believe that through the common thread of overcoming challenges, caring for our loved ones, and helping our communities, the rest of us will realize that our world is actually much brighter than some would make us think. And now, to shed more light. This Way Out.
Hello, welcome back to This Way Out. Another Skype interview with a very, very cool gentleman that we came to meet and get connected through that vast and expansive veteran network that exists in our awesome community, and via social media, of course. I honestly can't remember who got a hold of who anymore, but I'm sitting here with Ben Killoy.
Yep.
Did I say that right?
Yep.
Ben Killoy comes to us all the way from Wisconsin, right?
Yep. 45 minutes south of Madison.
What's that?
45 minutes south of Madison.
Excellent. Well, I appreciate you being on This Way Out, Ben, and I got a feeling you're really gonna open things up for me personally. You're gonna make an influence on me personally just by sitting here talking to you, but also to the people that tune into this project. The more the increasing amounts of people that are tuning into This Way Out and are looking for some positive influencers and looking to meet people that are doing good things in this world and in this country especially. And I really appreciate you being on, buddy.
No problem. Thank you for the invite, and I'm always excited to have a conversation, especially with a fellow veteran.
Oh, yeah. Get some. All right. So, Ben, are you originally from Wisconsin?
Yep, I grew up 30 minutes from where I live now.
Did you, I used to be stationed up there in the Midwest in North Dakota, and North Dakota's winters were ridiculous. Are they pretty bad in Wisconsin?
I would say they're not North Dakota winters, but this past winter was pretty ridiculous. It didn't start till January, so I feel like Wisconsin weather has been delayed by a whole month or month and a half. Summer didn't really start till July 1st, and spring didn't really end till the middle of May. I think we had snow on the ground on May 10th.
Yeah. May 10th. That's cool. Well, that happened to us a couple of times in North Dakota. We had Easter egg hunts in the snow. Made it interesting. Well, tell us a little bit about your upbringing, your folks, whether or not you have any brothers and sisters, interests, hobbies, that sort of stuff.
All right, so 30 minutes from here, I grew up on my family farm. My dad has 210 acres. We had pigs and cows growing up, and now we just have steers, so he just raises about 125 head of cattle. He is a corn, soybean farmer generally, and then the steers. My story, I would say, let's go back all the way maybe till I was about 4 years old. When I was 4 years old, my grandfather died, and it was one of those moments that I don't really fully understand because my dad doesn't talk about it, but he bought our family farm, my grandfather, in 1963 and moved up on it. And my dad was raised on the farm that I was raised on as well. And then my dad took it over, and my grandma and grandpa built a house at the end of our driveway. There's like a 3/4 mile driveway between us and the road. So my grandmother was always at the end of my driveway. And my grandfather, he died of a heart attack when he was doing chores. So he would come up every day and help my dad do chores. And one day he went in the milk house and had a heart attack, and then he was gone. And I don't remember too much about that. I remember a few memories of him when he was alive at my grandmother's, but not much about it. But the relationship that I grew with my grandmother And really, I often describe that my grandmother was my first best friend. And I had an older sister and a younger sister. So I was right in the middle. Being in the country, there wasn't a lot of male influence other than my dad. And I had a cousin that was maybe comes over every 3 months or something. He'd spend the night at my grandma's. But really, didn't have anybody. And so without that, my grandmother was the first person when I got off the bus. She was the first person I would hang out with. If I was bored in the summer, I would go down and hang out with her. And really, that relationship with her really influenced me more than I realized. And I haven't really unpacked it until the last 4 years. But she really taught me what intentional love was, and also just what generally love was. Because in many ways, she was always there. She always knew how to make you feel better. She would always listen. And she was just always that person would do something with you, whether it be bake a pie or whether it would be doing something. And my grandma was always there pretty much all the year long for me. And that relationship morphed into being my best friend. But then also the area that never really got filled up was confidence in being a man. I remember reflecting back on high school and always being picked on, never having a lot of friends, never feeling accepted for who I was. Those things, now looking back, initially were holding me back because I could hear the voices inside my head at baseball practice. An example would be in sophomore year, I did baseball. I did baseball almost all my life. So I kept doing it in high school. And played freshman year. Everything was fine. Played sophomore year. And I put all my effort in. I wasn't that athletic. I'm not naturally talented in baseball, but I liked it. And I put all my effort in, did all the practices, did all the work, and I played 2 innings. And I'll never forget the coach using us as like a threat to the people that were playing. Like, I got 2 guys here sitting on the bench ready to play. You guys need to act up. And doing all that work and the other players always making fun of me, like that really affected me more. That moment, that whole year of sophomore baseball really held me back because I was like, I did the work. I showed up. I put in the effort and it didn't get me anywhere. And somehow my brain used that lesson in a lot of different areas to incorrectly analyze of where I could go with my life and what I could do with it. Fast forward a little bit, I wanted to go to school and I wanted computers, and I didn't really know where I wanted to go. I was squirreling a couple different places. I didn't really feel like I was fully supported by my parents. So I ultimately started looking at the military. Started with the Air Force, and the Air Force was really always computerized. So I always knew, I thought that was the right way to go. I didn't want to be the Army. I didn't want to be on a boat. I thought the Marine Corps was just a bunch of people that shot stuff up. I only thought they were grunts. I really didn't realize they had all this other stuff. And I contacted the Air Force recruiter. They came out, talked to us. Everything seems like it's going kosher. And then we have a church picnic. And that church picnic, the Marine recruiter, who was the #1 recruiter 3 years in a row in Wisconsin, had a bouncy house at our church picnic and had a table there. And I didn't go up to talk to him. I'm scared to death of talking to people like that, especially a Marine. But my mom wants to go over and make sure I'm exploring all my options. And next thing you know, I'm going over talking to her. And then if I quickly find out the Marine Corps has everything that everybody else has, it's all a big lie. They're not just a bunch of grunts. And they have computers and everything like that as well. And I'm talking to him on Tuesday in the guidance counselor's office. And then 2 weeks later, I'm raising my right hand for the Marine Corps. And I would have been voted least likely to join the Marine Corps and be successful in the Marine Corps and graduate boot camp and make it the 4 years. I wasn't fit. I couldn't run. I was fat. All the things that would have disqualified you from thinking that I was going to be a good Marine. And this was probably the first moment of adversity where I almost joined the Marine. I'm positive. I'm not positive, probably some percentage, but a good portion. I didn't have the balls to tell him no. That it was almost one of those dare to be great moments that there's a moment here. I could take the easy road or a road that I don't even understand, which is the Marine Corps. And I really just walked headfirst into it. I don't know what was pulling me. It was like the dare to be great, walk into it and figure it out. Boot camp was super hard for me.
For just a minute, I pause you there because it sounds like, I mean, I know you pretty much said it, but you just didn't say the word. You had a serious issue with insecurity. You just weren't.
Correct. I didn't know who I was.
What's that?
I didn't know who I was.
You just didn't know who you were.
I was always trying to be what everybody else wanted me to be and what I thought I needed to be liked, to be accepted. And in
Yeah.
that process, I would consistently always lose myself. I didn't know that at the time, but now looking back, I
Right.
figured it.
And whenever the opportunity to join the Marine Corps came up, that was like your moment. That
Yeah.
was like that was your moment. You said it's dare to be great, but maybe it was it was a moment where you might have been at that fork in the road where or you were at that moment where you're like, this is possibly who I am supposed to be. This is taking me where I'm supposed to be going.
And even after the Marine Corps, the last I've been out, so I went and joined in 2003, so almost 20 years now since I joined. And I can say the lineage that I'm on now would never have taken place if I didn't do that fork in the road and take that left instead of the
Yeah,
right, because
yeah,
I didn't get computers in the Marine Corps. I got the recruiter half truth, and I ended up getting generator mechanic. And then once I became a good generator mechanic, fell in love with electricity, got out of the Marine Corps, got a job with a generator company here in Wisconsin. Got really good at that. Had a coworker that's had a friend who was going through some bad relationships with his now my wife, and left that generator company. And now I'm at a different place that also is in the generator area, which then led me to expand my growth and get hooked on the growth mindset. I dropped out of the college of engineering, realizing a love of electricity doesn't make you good at it. I had to go through that failure to find my love of leadership. All of that happened because I made that left turn when I was
right,
18.
right. That first domino had to fall. You had to take the step.
Mhm.
Take the step.
And it was the biggest step I could take, and it was the
That
hardest
was
step.
dare to be great. That part was dare to be great.
Yeah.
That is really really cool. You know, in a way I had I had the same sort of experience. Um, when I was my wife and I, girlfriend and boyfriend at the time, we were really young in our teens, and we had my daughter, and we had another one on the way. And I was washing dishes at a country club, right? And when I was washing those dishes, it just popped into my head to join the military. I'd never had any inclination to join the military. None. Zero. Zero inclination. I thought I was going to be a musician. You know what I mean? Like I was a music major. I was a music major. I was going to school to be a music major, and I'm washing dishes, and it pops into my head, join the Air Force. You know, and the next day or a few days following, but very shortly after, I'm on the phone talking to an Air Force recruiter. My girlfriend at the time, my wife now, is in the other room. I hang up with the Air Force recruiter. I go into the room. I said, "Hey, we just joined the Air Force." She's like, "What?"
Where'd this come from?
Yeah, where did this come from? So it's and once again, much like your story, you know, that first domino fell, and all these, you know, great and amazing things came afterward.
And
But
you
you
ended up
have to
doing 20, you did 20 years, right?
yeah, in 20 years. But just like you said, you have to dare to be great. I've
And
always kind
oddly
of been
enough,
impulsive that way
I
though
got
too. I've always, but I mean, I think everybody deals with insecurity issues and searching for yourself and that sort of stuff, you know, around that age. But I've also had an issue with impulsivity, and it's sometimes it pays off, and sometimes it doesn't. But anyway, but all that being said though, that is that is awesome. And I think the other interesting part of your story is that usually it's the other way around as far as like which service to join. People are go from Army or Marines or something like that into the Air Force.
mhm.
I mean, not that that means anything, but very few times do you hear people jumping from one of the other services into the Marine Corps. So good on you, man. Good for you. I'm glad it worked out for you.
And the crazier part is one of the reasons why I got out. The When I got out in 2007, I wasn't good at shooting and I wasn't good at running, so I was slowing down my promotion. But in my gut, I had this feeling, and I didn't know it at the time. I'm closer to that feeling of what it was now. But I got out because I knew the Marine Corps was going to hold me back. Like I had already started to ignite some passion in my belly about leadership and developing people. One of my favorite things to do in the Marine Corps was to take Marines that other people had given up on and turn them into Marines. The duds, and convince them that there are someone inside there. Like I could see someone greater than they could see themselves. I love that. And that sparked the path that I'm on now. But I had to almost just trust the process. And that process included losing myself again for 6 years once I got out and getting sucked into the civilian world and just molding to who they were instead of trying to be who I wanted to be. But at the same time, all of that had to happen. I had to go through that process. But getting out for the same reason of dare to be great, like it could, I mean, at that point, the Marine Corps could have been the easier road because you have everything there provided. You can just keep going through life. You can do 20, and a lot of people do, and there's nothing wrong with that. But for me, I knew there was something bigger I was meant for, and the Marine Corps wasn't going to get me there.
It served its purpose.
Yep.
It served its purpose. I had a conversation with another gentleman who was a Marine, and he kind of had the same. He kind of had the same feeling. He was an infantry. He was an infantryman, and but he said basically the same thing you said. You know, like it had run its course. He wanted to do it because he wanted to. It was a test of sorts for himself just to see if he could, and maybe that's what you were saying. You know, something sort of like that for yourself. But after his, I guess it is pretty similar. After a time, he figured it had run its course, and it was time for him to make a change. So, you know, it sounds like you're saying the same exact thing. It had served its purpose.
And the Marine Corps didn't necessarily fully, let's say, transform me, because there's a story that I often repeat when it comes to my fitness journey. So I was stationed in Okinawa for 3 years, and when you get to Okinawa, it's like breathing underwater. So they make you wear a white shirt during PT to make sure that they know that you're a fresh bait on the island. Yeah. And our platoon sergeant was the poster board Marine, just tall, skinny, and supermoto. And when he showed up for PT, which wasn't very often, but when he did, it was going to be a gung-ho type of run. He was a fast runner. And I was always the guy that had fallen out. My brain had conditioned myself that it was okay to fall out. It was just something inevitable. And we're running maybe like halfway into it. I might have fallen out. I might have been trying to keep up. And all of a sudden he yells back. And I had maybe been on the island for like a month and a half. So I'm just super fresh, super unconfident on anything. And he yells back, "Killoy, are you weak?" And without even hesitating, I say, "Yes, sir." And that moment plagued me for, I don't know, probably even just up to a year ago. Yeah, because there was this constant idea that, you know what, Killoy, you are weak, and you're just, and it really hasn't been till the last 2 years where, and I've worked on my gym fear, because I came out of the Marine Corps not feeling fit, and I, again, put all my effort, same thing like that baseball effort. I did the work, but yet I didn't get the results I wanted. So I had this fear of failure at the gym. And I really started facing it and walking through it, and realized you just need a coach and you need to have the right mindset when you're going through. And I was actually running this morning, and I was sprinting on the last section. And instead of like saying I was weak in my head, I heard this voice in the last like maybe 25 feet saying, "Keep pushing it, keep pushing it, keep pushing it." Yeah. So like even what I did in the Marine Corps, even boot camp, which transforms you in the hardest 13 weeks I've ever been through, it only really just built like the infrastructure, or, and maybe another way to say it, it was like it ordered the lumber to build a house, but it didn't actually build it for me. And I'm only really starting to build the house that the lumber the Marine Corps gave me now, as I start to unwind the past, unwind where I'm going. Before I started my podcast, I was writing a lot, just getting good at writing and getting words out of my head. And I took some advice from someone, and I wrote a letter to myself. And so it was essentially in the idea of a close friend trying to remind me of why I was worth it, because I've always struggled with the self-worth issue. So I started writing this letter. It sounds funny, but it was really therapeutic. And I probably write the most profound words that I've ever written to myself. So I'm writing along, going, telling all these different things. And all of a sudden, these words come out of my head that says, "Ben, early in life, you think that these people that push you down is what's holding you back. But really, those people pushed you down so that later in life, you could pull people up." And I was like, holy shit, where did that come from?
Boom!
Because that gave everything that I went through purpose. Like I was pushed down I
Yeah.
know that feeling. I know the look on my face. I know the look on someone else's face. Thinking back to the Marine Corps, why I like lifting people up that had been pushed down. Like I can feel it and I can see it and I can see something greater because I've kind of risen above that. And that it allowed me to take what I went through, that adversity, and to turn it around and give it purpose. And that's a lot of the big influencers, Oprah, Tony Robbins, you name it, they all have some type of horrible adversity they went through. Oprah went through poor Missouri. Like she grew up with nothing.
Yeah.
That adversity turned around, created the empire that is Oprah.
Yeah.
Oprah. I don't know whether I'm going to be the next Oprah, but I know that these little adversities, when you reframe them and figure out what the purpose of them happening was and how they can propel you forward, that was really a big moment for me to realize where I was headed and what the reason was and what I was going to do when I got there.
I think it's also important to note, though, that it took time. It took time for you to realize what the purpose is. So the purpose of your adversity won't be, and this is for anybody who might be watching this, the purpose of the adversity won't be obvious at the time or even immediately after you overcome it. The purpose of the adversity comes over time, later on, down the road, after the first domino has fallen, like we just talked about earlier. It takes time. And I know that there are people that deal with stress and anxiety and stuff like that, and a lot of that comes from a fear of the unknown. And that fear of the unknown and fear of not knowing what's around the corner, what's awaiting for them in the immediate future or just around the corner, or what they're about to face next. That fear and that anxiety can be crippling, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But just knowing that whatever adversity that you are facing, whatever fire that you are in right now, if you persevere, if you push through it, if you give yourself a reason in the immediacy of it all, there will be the purpose of all of it will reveal itself eventually over time. But you gotta overcome the adversity as it's happening right there at that moment. I like to use an analogy of glass sculpting, right? Glass sculpting, it starts out as this crude ore of materials and stuff like that, and it takes intense heat and friction and twisting and abuse and pushing and pulling for it to take shape. But eventually, it does reveal itself to be this piece of art that stands the test of time. But first, it has to go through the fire. First it has to endure the abuse of what it takes to take shape before it can be that thing that you can be proud of. That's going to stand the test of time. Before it becomes that thing that's going to be your legacy, it's got to go through the fire first. You got to start somewhere, and you are spot on, buddy, and good for you. I'm gonna that little clip right there. I'm using that as your preview clip. That was awesome.
The one I
I'm
like
like
your
amped
glass.
right now. I'm ready to.
I haven't heard the glass one. I like that one. Is the way it's almost like forging iron in the furnace as well.
Yeah.
The one that I always heard that really helped me was when you want to grow a great flower bed, you've got to put a little crap on it.
Yeah.
And the more crap you put on it, the better the flowers.
Yeah.
And something beautiful can grow from the biggest pile of crap.
Yeah. 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 That's
And
that's
the
that's
worst
all
day,
good
you
stuff.
can
I'm
think
all
like,
I'm
okay,
all hyped up. I'm
this
amped
is
up.
just
I'm
more
ready.
fertilizer.
I'm ready. I'm fired up. I'm ready to go. Let's do this, dude. I tell you what, you've already shared a whole bunch, and so quickly too. Usually I'm sitting here with somebody for like 45 minutes to an hour just trying to unpeel the onion or whatever. But
Wait for a piece of juice.
yeah, but you're an open book, bud. That was
That's how
awesome.
I wasn't always this way, but I've definitely gotten comfortable talking about the crap I put on my flower bed.
Man, I'll tell you what, dude. That relationship with your grandma thing, that is so awesome. Like my grandparents are from Mexico, right? And my grandmother, she's so old school, dude. But she's tough, but she's fair. You know what I mean? And she's always had high expectations, but she's like the most caring, loving person like you could ever meet. You know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
you show up to the house and she gets right to work, get making some food for you. You know what I mean? And if you don't eat, you might as well just be slapping somebody in the face.
Yeah, if I didn't feel good, my grandma made a pie.
Yeah, 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 man. But that's cool though. That's awesome. Um,
And even to this day, I am the sewer in the house. I
yeah,
did sewing for 4-H. I'm the pie baker generally. There are a lot of feminine things that I learned from my grandmother because that's where I was and that's what I was hanging out with. And she was big on sewing and different things. And I'm proud to say that I sew. And the isolation of being on the farm, not being able to like hang out with the city kids or like connect with your friends from school, that always was a difficult narrative for me to work through. And if anything, it led through another crisis of mine, which was the friend crisis. I rarely ever had friends that I could count on. And one thing that I really enjoyed about Okinawa was you're all on the same crappy island.
yeah,
And so you all have this extra commonality to stick together. And so it was easier to create friendships because there was
yeah,
no place else to go. You couldn't go to Vegas for a weekend like you could in the States.
right.
But when I got out, I was right back to where I started. I was maybe had two friends. All the people from high school had left me for dead. No one really cared that I was home, and that plagued me till probably like I was 32. I'm 34 now. I had a 30-year-old midlife crisis because I was like, there was a random story that led to this thought was Jay Leno had just retired from the Tonight Show, and in his finale, all of these people came out to say what wonderful person Jay was and how
Yeah,
he helped them get to
yeah,
where they were.
yeah,
And he was crying, and I was bawling my eyes out during this episode. And ultimately, I was like, will anybody show up at my funeral to say nice things? And I was like, I had no idea. And it was really this
yeah,
pit of depression that I was in when I turned 30. And it wasn't until I got some advice that was if you want a result you've never had, then you need to do something you've never done. And if I applied it to this friend category, it was plain simple. I don't talk to people. And
hmm,
you have to talk to people in order to have friends. And you have to go beyond the sports and news conversation to have a true friend. And I was like, okay, we now got something I got to work on. So I started with dads at the park. I've always seen them there. I always wanted to talk to them, but I was always like going back to my high school insecurities. Every person I would talk to was that high school girl that was going to say no. What if they reject me? What is that?
right,
What does
yeah,
that feel inside when they reject and don't want to talk to me? Turns out it was all BS. It's all in my head. Like I knew, I didn't know at the time, but I now know. And they were wanting to talk to me just as much as they did. I did, but
yeah,
no one was. They were just waiting for someone to go first. I made so
right,
many friends at the park. A couple of them still friends with them today. And I ultimately took that to airplanes, grocery stores, and now I'm more addicted to talking to strangers. And that really led me to a mindset of I'm always one conversation away from something amazing coming into my life, and I'm going to miss 100% of those chances that I don't
true,
take. And that all came from that insecurity of friendship and me reframing it and what I needed to do to move past it. And that adversity of talking to people is probably one of my biggest wins since I left the Marine Corps because ultimately, and even more doing my podcast and what you're learning now by talking to people, you can't move your life forward unless you can talk to people. Nothing you really can't solve anything inside your head. You need someone to talk to. You need someone to bounce it off to. It's why therapy works.
amen.
And if you're trying to create a business, you need to talk to someone to sell it to. You need
Right,
to do all of these things, or you have a problem. Well, you need to talk to someone to find the person that has the solution.
yeah,
All of these things happen from talking to people. So I often tell veterans like the best advice I wish I could have got was figure out how to talk to strangers quicker, faster, and better
yeah,
early. And that advice would have propelled me far more than any TAPS class about interviews. But that adversity really has helped me overcome these interviews that I do now on my podcast of just talking to strangers is how we met. It's why I was like, hey, you want to catch up and meet and have a conversation? Because I never know what rock I lift up and what's going to be under it. It could be the one thing I've always waited for.
yeah, yeah. Ooh, you kind of took it. You kind of took an interesting turn there because I used to use that lifting rocks thing, but as a negative with my kids. It's like careful which rocks you kick over because you never know what's underneath there. You know, if you go looking for crazy, you just might find it. But that I like it better the way you said.
Yeah. With
What you've been
opportunity, that
looking
there's
for just
always
might be under that
opportunity.
rock. But good man, I tell you what, it's very encouraging. I'm feeling very inspired right now. Um, That's all very good information, and I, no offense to the folks that I've interviewed up to this point, but by far this is probably my favorite interview.
Thank you.
Because first of all, you made it very easy, and if I had to be honest, it appears that you have told this story a few times, so you might be a little experienced, and you've made that. I think that's part of the easy. What's made it easy on me is that you're. It sounds like you've done this a few times, and maybe this might be a good opportunity to segue. That experience has come with this project that you got started. You have a podcast going on, and I was hoping you might be able to tell us a little bit about your podcast, what it's all about, how you got started, the idea, etc. Blah. Just give it to us. I'm sure you'll be good at it. You've done a good job up till now.
So I'll try not to sink the interview in the second part. I'll go all the way back to the beginning because in this case, the serendipity of how I ended up where I am is pretty incredible. So I joined a dad mastermind on the internet where a bunch of dads doing life together. And there was a mastermind starting for kind of freelancing dads trying to do a side hustle. I joined it. I knew I wanted some type of side hustle. So I joined it and started figuring things out. And I was like, I'm never a guy that is a lack of skills. I'm kind of a Swiss Army knife more. It's more of a shorter list of what I can't do than what I can do. So I was like, how do you figure out what you want to do when you grow up, when everything you start doing, you fall in love with? And I first fell in love with the idea. I was like, a life coach. It pretty much encompasses everything because I got a random little tidbit for a lot of area of life. A life coach kind of is an all-encompassing thing. I'll be a life coach. Good. I'll start it. So I had a logo. I had my business name. It was going to be called Your Reflection Coaching. I was going to reflect back what you couldn't see about yourself. And I was maybe like 2 weeks into it. And I'm sitting in bed and I was starting to read some more fiction novels because it helps me escape a little bit more than nonfiction books. And it was a Tom Clancy novel. I hated the book. I couldn't even finish it. But nevertheless, it gave me this idea, which put me to where I am today. I'm sitting there and there's a Marine at Arlington Cemetery. And he's talking about, I don't even remember what it was about, but they were at Arlington Cemetery and he was visiting someone. And I was like, holy shit, I could life coach veterans. And I was like, I am a veteran. I'm already connected. I already have some authenticity. Poof, makes good sense. So started scrolling that, came up with a business called True Purpose for Life. And it felt right, but I didn't really put all the effort in that I needed to. And I think that was just because it didn't truly feel right in my gut. But I did that business for almost 2 years. And it helped me do a lot of things because when I first got out, I didn't end my military career the best way. I ended up with having to testify at a court martial that was really nasty and it just left a bad taste in my mouth. And I spent 10 years just avoiding it. Like if you figured out that I was in the Marine Corps, okay, I'll acknowledge it. But if you didn't, I was hiding from it. And this forced me to face that fear, to face who I was, to re-enter my own identity. And it helped me reconnect with that process. And by doing that for 2 years, I started connecting with the veteran community, started connecting with other people out there, and really did that almost for 2 years. And it wasn't until the one group that I invited you to, the Ambitious Vet, Chris Hoffman, he invited me to Military Influencer Conference in Orlando last year. And I just had to pretty much pay my way to get there. We shared a room, so the cost was low. I went in with the idea of something veteran dad life coach. That was what I went in with. I didn't really have the whole thing baked, but that's what the ingredients were. Started talking to people. A few moms I almost brought to tears because their spouses didn't come home yet. The dad there, he was just disconnected. He would sit and watch Netflix all night. He wouldn't interact with the kids. And they would be tearing up over me talking about what I was trying to do. And I was like, okay, I think I'm onto something here. And I just started talking to more people, validated there was nobody serving veteran dads or military dads. And I was like, okay, it's completely empty. That's generally a sign for ripeness of when something can start. And there was a guy that I met who helps people with this, and he pretty much gifted me a business plan for it, breathed life into me that I could do it. And on that plane ride home from Orlando, I wrote the entire business plan for what becomes my podcast. And I was doing this mind map of all these different words. And that mind map led me to a simple mission, kind of based on leave no man behind. But I didn't like that. It was too cliche. And I was like, I'm going to bring every dad home. And the moment I came up with that, I was like, this is it. I had the mission before I had the name. And the name was difficult because there isn't one good word that sits above veteran or military. And military is generally active and veterans generally post, but I didn't want to leave anyone out. I didn't want to create something complicated. I spent a month trying to figure out a name. And just sitting in a podcast, listening to a podcast on the way to work, something was mentioned about most valuable player. And I was like, oh, that's an interesting letter, MVP. And then I was like, huh, I could go military veteran dad. And then I was like, oh, that was it. And then I was like, poof, a month into it, I figure out the most simplest form is just to put the two words together with dad on the end.
Yeah.
And then a bunch of 3 months passes, and then I launched the Military Veteran Dad podcast on January 1st to bring every dad home.
Yeah. Awesome. And how's that? How many episodes do you got? Just out of curiosity.
We just published 32.
31.
31
Right.
or 32.
That is I shake my head because you're right, man. You're right. The guys might be coming back. Even the gals might be coming back. And they don't come back. Not entirely.
Nope.
And
They stay in neutral.
yeah. And especially those that survive combat, contact with the enemy. I've heard it more than once where they say a part of them stayed out there. They left a piece of them out there, and they feel empty or incomplete, so in a nutshell, what I'm trying to say is I think I admire what you're doing, and I think it's needed. I think it's a need, and
Yeah.
I hope that I hope you see a lot of success, because if you see a lot of success, that means you're helping a lot of people. So I wish you all the luck in the world. Military Veteran Dad Podcast. Bring every dad home. I love it.
It's so simple, and everybody that hears it kind of just gets a nice warm and fuzzy because everybody likes the veteran community, everybody likes the active duty community, and everybody has seen those military videos of dad coming home where they surprise their kids at school or some shape or form. But there's a side that no one talks about, that's the honeymoon phase.
Yeah.
And it lasts about 3 months. And then life comes back into focus.
Yeah.
And that's when things go back into neutral, and people will find things, maybe work to bury themselves into, or vice versa. And that's when that energy is no longer there that they originally felt when they first came home, and they don't enter back into their kids' lives and recognize what the role they need to play.
That, and I was talking about it the other day. A lot of it has to do with they try to prep you as much as they can. When you're gone for long deployments, that your wife or your spouse has been doing it without you, and the kids have been doing it without you, and they've all the stuff that you might have been used to when you left, it might be completely upside down and being done totally different because they've been having to do it without you.
They learn to do life without you. They create processes and systems that don't require you to be there.
Right.
Emotionally, they want you there. But as far as to get the job done every day, you're not needed. And that's almost like the initial thing where you can come home and you'll get sucked into the idea like, I don't think my family needs me, which is almost the first seed that, as a veteran or active duty, if you're not okay with talking to people, going back to talking to strangers and talking about things that you're feeling, that those thoughts grow into and in not getting outside your head, it gets so loud. It's like an echo chamber I describe. And that echo chamber gets so loud, it eventually comes to the conclusion that your family is better without you, because your observations are they don't need you. And if you don't talk about it to invalidate what you're thinking, you eventually take action on the loudest thought that you can hear.
No, I know exactly what you're talking about. And it doesn't have to do with just deployments or anything like that. It's transitioning, transitioning out
Same
of that.
thing.
Holy mackerel. I was talking to you about that the other day. I've never been to mental health once my entire active duty career. And I retire, I'm on terminal leave, and I'm thinking about all kinds of crazy, stupid stuff.
Yep.
You know what I mean? It wasn't funny at the time, but I was like, what the hell, like, I don't know. not to get into the details about it, but you start thinking some stupid stuff.
And you need to get them. Like I found writing was the first thing I found about writing was it was very therapeutic. And the first
Yeah,
thing that I started realizing was I would start writing, and I was like, "Oh, that's pretty good life advice. I
yeah,
should take it." And it would really just came from me. And a lot of it is there's so many versions of the truth inside your head,
yeah,
and some of them go rise to the top, some of them float down. But at the end of the day, when you're writing or when you're speaking, one truth comes out. And that's what I think why therapy works, because you're validating one version of one truth
yeah,
and your brain understands what it just spoke. And so it starts to use that to interpret what other things are going on. And
yeah,
same thing with writing, same thing with speaking. You
yeah,
need to get these things outside your head. And there's another concept with the dad group that I've started on Facebook as well with the podcast is we weren't meant to do life alone. That for 3,000 years, civilization and men survived in tribes. We hunted, we farmed, we did life together. In the last 100 years, we've gotten so far isolated that society reinforces that men should be tough and keep their emotions on lockdown, and you should be able to handle all alone. But that's the exact recipe for suicide.
yeah,
And you need to be able to share the load. And I best describe it in the Marine Corps in all branches of the service. Your back is the first thing that goes. And it's only because they make you lift stuff that you're not supposed to. Well, in the Marine Corps, if you can't lift it, you just don't have enough Marines trying. It doesn't matter how big or heavy it is. You just need more people trying. And I've really equated that to life. Like there's things that life gives you, just like in the Marine Corps, you can't lift by yourself. They're so heavy. It could be a death in the family. It could be anything. It could be a job loss. You can't lift everything that life gives you. You need to be able to share that load, and you need some type of tribe or community, whether it be online or in real life, something where you can just go and type your heart out and share that load of what you're carrying around in your heart, because your heart isn't designed to carry all of these loads and all of these anxieties and fears and all this stuff that you have in your head to to be successful. You need to share the load. The most successful people know they need to surround themselves with people to support and lift them up, because they're not going to have all the answers.
yeah. I'm impressed. I think you're doing a great thing. And whatever insecurities you said you may have experienced, I think you're on your way. If you don't feel like you're winning against that thing, I'm here to tell you from the outside looking in, as someone who's never met you personally, right? Who's
We've
never
only
put
been
eyes
friends
on you
about 7
before,
days.
it really sounds like you're doing a good job. Either that or you're faking it really good.
Not everything is perfect, and I still suffer from a lot of anxiety.
Right.
But I have a colloyism that, or kind of my weird ways to put things together, that I practice daily to counter these anxieties that I'm still feeling. That limiting beliefs that I have about myself are very similar to rubber bands. If you keep stretching a rubber band, the rubber band eventually breaks. Same thing with limiting beliefs. You keep doing things that prove your mind wrong about what it believes about yourself. These rubber bands and limiting beliefs will eventually snap, and your mind will just start running because there's no longer this tension on these rubber bands holding you back anymore,
Have you?
limiting what you could be.
Are you on your way to writing a book? Have you already written a book yet?
I did publish a book on Amazon last year just for the understanding of how to publish and writing one and getting it done. It's a 20-page ebook, nothing too crazy, but I would
Any
say at some point in my
Killoyisms in
future
there
there'll probably be a
worth
book.
reading? Any Killoyisms in there worth reading?
Oh, it's full of colloisms. I've got colloisms out the yin yang.
What's the name of your book?
What do they call it? 5 Steps to an Authentic Life.
5 Steps to an Authentic Life, people. This camera? Yes, it's the only camera on. 5 Steps. Damn it, I already forgot it. What is it again?
5 Steps to an Authentic Life.
Damn it. Okay, 5 Steps to an Authentic Life. Available on Amazon on ebook. Go get it.
Amazon, it's $2.99 or $3.99. So
Go get it. What are you waiting for? Get your colloyisms.
there's one thing I it's called a crescendo that I'm really working on now, so, but beyond even what I've got with the podcast. So I have my podcast. I'm spinning those, and doing those things to build that audience to turn it into a business. But at the same time, there's when I watched the Greatest Showman movie, it really touched me because I saw it as like the entrepreneur's journey. And there's words in there that really resonated with me. And when he closes his eyes, he saw a world that he could only imagine when he closed his eyes, that no one else could see, but he could see it when he closed his eyes. And I often describe this for me, that when I close my eyes, I see a room of 1,000 people waiting to hear what I have to say. And so I know public speaking is some portion of my future where I really want to go and speak and make a bigger impact in those audiences. But at the same time, I'm not there yet. So last September, after waiting 8 months and starting trying to debate about it, I jumped in and I joined something called Toastmasters. And Toastmasters is a public speaking group. It's the cheapest self-help you can get. It's $60 for 6 months. And it's just amazing mentors and community and people believing you and helping critiquing you. And I describe my Toastmasters as 2 times a month, I get to touch a future that I can only see when I close my eyes. Because I'm there public speaking, I'm getting reinforced with feedback and people like, man, that was really good. Like that breathes life into me. And I can find the smallest way to touch that future in the future, but touch it today. And so the advice I give out is, if there's something that you really have an ambitious goal, it doesn't matter how big it is, try to imagine the smallest thing you can do daily or weekly that allows you to touch a piece of that. Because the closer you touch that, the more often you touch it, the more your mind will start to generate that reality to make it come true. And the more you'll believe it and start running towards it. So it doesn't matter. It's perfect advice for any situation, because there's so many things that we want to do, but we think there's a ginormous gap and there is a gap. You have to grow to get where you want to go. But at the same time, you can show up. I showed up at Toastmasters that it's an imperfect speaker. And in less than a year, they wanted to make me the president because they liked what I had to say. I didn't reach out to become president, but nevertheless, I stepped up and now I'm the president of our club. Like, those are things that are happening, and I'm slowly getting more and more of touching that future. And in theory, the future will come faster than it would have if I just waited and maybe went the hard public speaking route, where maybe I had a podcast, maybe I had a book, and I started taking public speaking because people offer, but I'm not good at it. Now, when those offers do come, I'll be like, man, this guy really knows what he's talking about. Well, yeah, I've been practicing for 3 years and 2 times a month in a small group of 8 people.
What's the saying, 10,000 hours? Is it 10,000 hours to be a professional at something, to be an expert? I think it's what it is. I think there's a saying out there, it takes 10,000 hours to be an expert, and it's like, yeah, you're good at it because you've been practicing, So
yeah, there's a giant marathon that every successful person ran that you never get to see, and they didn't wake up successful.
That's right.
But they all started from something very humble. Even a couple of good examples that I really love is Rocky and Steven. Who played Rocky? Sylvester Stallone. Sylvester Stallone. That's it. I kept saying Steven Seagal. Sylvester Stallone.
Shame on you.
I know, exactly. It's such a good movie. Shame on me. It kills my story. He tried pitching that idea 10 times.
Yeah.
Before it was taken. Like, he trained for that role long before that was accepted, but he pitched it 10 times. Harry Potter was turned down 15 times before the book was officially accepted.
Do you know what the big hang up with Rocky was, though?
I don't think I remember.
He wanted to play Rocky.
Oh yeah. He knew that he had to be that.
Somebody else. Yeah, they wanted somebody else to play it. Like, this is a good story. We've got just a guy to do it, and he'd come back with, yeah, I'm standing right here.
Yep.
And they're like, nah, maybe we'll do it some other time. Yeah, that was the biggest issue, but he stuck by his guns, and guess what? It worked.
Those stories are great adversities of them doing something when you're the only one believing in yourself.
Yeah. And
just keep on swimming, as Dory says. And on my podcast intro, I actually use Dory as part of it, and I have this helicopter that I portray in my intro, and it says Dory won.
I hear it. Yeah, I always thought it was cool.
I did that all sitting at Starbucks, which actually maybe some others. One of my secret sauces. Last August, I made a big epiphany that Starbucks opens at 5 a.m. on the weekends. And I'd always struggled to try to work on it or work on anything at night or in the house, and realizing that Starbucks opened at 5 a.m., I was like, that's perfect. I can get up and I can go and I could work while everybody's sleeping. I went from August and up until probably the end of May, until summer started, really. I showed up at Starbucks 2 times a week on Saturday and Sunday at 5 a.m. and worked till about 7:30, 7:45 on my business. And that has been one of my secret sauces of getting outside my house, getting outside of everything that's part of your life in your house, and focusing on where you want to go and doing those works. Oftentimes I'm editing the podcast during those times. That's really where what got me to here today, is because I actually tell people this, like, if you have an idea that's worth waking up at 5 a.m. on the weekends, then you have something to start running towards.
Yeah.
If it's not worth waking up at 5 a.m. on Saturday or Sunday to go work on it for 3 hours before family wakes up, might need to incubate it a little bit more.
Yeah. I have kind of a similar philosophy. If you're losing sleep over it, it's probably something you should be working on.
I like that one too.
If you're losing sleep over it, it's probably something you should be working on. Dude, I don't want to cut any of this out, so I don't want to chop this interview up any more than I have to. So I'm gonna wrap this up.
That's fine. You pretty much got the pretty good highlight reel. I pretty much spilled my beans on the good stuff, at least.
Dude, man, I'll tell you what, we've got to visit more. We've got to visit more. I want to hear more of this stuff. Like I'm hooked. I'm definitely going to be subscribing. Where's your podcast available?
Pretty much everywhere podcasts can be found. iHeartRadio. You can even ask Alexa to play the Military Veteran Dad, and she'll play it. It's on Google. It's on Apple. It's on Spotify. Spotify is also a nice little median between Google and Apple that has podcasts. You can also subscribe to the podcast on militaryveterandad.com, which is our website, and all the links to the different platforms are on there as well. You can even listen to it on YouTube. No video, but you can listen to the audio. The audio files are uploaded as videos on YouTube. And you can subscribe to my blog. And then also every week, my website will send you a list of the things that I publish on the website, and then also the latest episode to stay up to date as well.
All right. Excellent. Awesome. Okay, so usually I conclude the interviews with the stuff that so much of the stuff that you've already shared. So, but I want to go ahead and give you an opportunity to say, put the last word in here. I always like to, I tell people, you've got an audience, an opportunity, and if there was one thing that you had to say to an audience, what would that be? An advice, whatever. The floor is yours.
I will sum it up in 2 pieces. The first one comes from Miss Frizzle on the Magic School Bus, and the advice that misses every adult that watches it with their kids. In every episode, she's talking about life is about getting messy and making mistakes. But nothing about society in 2019 conditions us to get messy and make mistakes with our life. It's all about picture perfect Facebook profile and Instagram profile. Get messy and make mistakes. And as a dad, control is an illusion. Let go of the control, lean into your kids, get messy, make mistakes, do something crazy, have adventures. That control isn't something that actually exists in your family. And when you're trying to control it, it's just going to create more anxiety. Let it go. Be dad. There's something in the podcast I always remind every dad that kids spell love, Time, that on your worst day, all they want is your time and attention. And as long as you're there and present in that time that you're there, it's not about the time you spend with your kids, it's the quality of time when you do spend it. Just focus on that. It's not that complicated to be dad. That just focus on that they spell love, Time.
Excellent. Well said. Well said, sir. Well, this is Ben Killoy. This is the This Way Out project. He's shared so much. I really hope that you stuck around and watched the whole thing. I was riveted, and I'll tell you what, I'm gonna be pushing this one hard, most definitely. Thank you very much, Ben, for being on the show.
Thank you for the opportunity.
I appreciate you sharing so much of yourself and so much advice and so many. Oh man, I'm taking a lot of this stuff with me. I'm putting it in.
I noticed you didn't take any notes though.
I got it. It's up here.
You were so attentive into listening.
Yeah, the Killoyisms. It's on Amazon. Book. I didn't write it down, but I've got it recorded.
5 steps to an authentic life.
There you go. Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. Hey, thanks for being on the show, buddy. Hey, if you liked this episode and you want to see future episodes, please subscribe. hit the little bell so you get notifications of future episodes. Check out previous episodes. Leave me a comment. Give some feedback. I haven't gotten a whole lot of feedback as to how these episodes, how people feel about these episodes, how you'd like to see them. Maybe you'd like to see them presented differently. I'd like to get them to be more engaging, but the creative wheels just aren't turning, so I could use some help in that area, and I can get that feedback via the comment section. I'm available on Facebook and Instagram at thiswoe.life, on Twitter at thiswoe_life, and then we got the website with the blog and the feature articles, in addition to the interviews. This one's included here with Mr. Ben Killoy. That's going to be at thiswoe-life.com. Thank you very much, Ben, once again. I appreciate you taking the time, and you guys take it easy out there. See you next time. God bless.
Thank you.